This week on the Virtual Skeptics, Bob should have seen this coming. Eve has been eclipsed. Barb is going with the flow. And Tim, that would be me, can speak for himself. I'm your host, Tim Farley, sitting in for Brian Gregory. And this is Virtual Skeptics. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Tim.
Hi. How's it going? I see everyone, well, except for Brian. I don't know where he is, but everyone else survived the eclipse.
Yeah,
yep.
Sure did.
So far. Out of it.
We went to St. Louis to see the eclipse,
All right.
which was awesome. My brother lives in the path of totality, so we just went down there for the day. It really was. It was nice.
Till the idiots next door started.
Yeah, they started shooting fireworks off right as totality started, because apparently in this little podunk part of Missouri, the only thing to do is try to blow off your fingers in celebration. So these assholes started shooting off really loud, obnoxious. It's like it's the one thing you're going to do is, one, look away to light these goddamn things, and secondly, do something that's going to distract other people from this once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Yeah.
Like, if I had been thinking, I would have yelled down there, stop it, we have a war veteran who's having flashbacks. Bastards.
That is a shitty thing to do.
I know. At least wait till the totality's over and then celebrate at the end, right?
Yeah.
All right.
People are stupid.
Really dumb. All of them.
We didn't have anything like that where I was, but it was great. All right. Well, let me introduce the panel, as if any of our viewers aren't aware of who everybody is now. But this is our panel for this week. We've got Bob Blaskowitz, CSI's conspiracy guy, web columnist, blogger for Skeptical Humanities, and Skepticality contributor. We've got Eve Siebert, editor and blogger at Skeptical Humanities, contributor to Skepticality and Insight at skeptic.com. We've got Barbara Drescher, former psychology instructor, blogger at ICBS Everywhere, and contributor to skeptical projects such as Insight at skeptic.com and The Odds Must Be Crazy. And me, hi, I'm Tim. I sometimes blog at various places, and I'm mostly known as the creator of what'stheharm.net and former JREF fellow. So that's your panel for tonight. Brian's off building a robot or something. So if you are watching us live on Wednesday night, you can ask us questions on the YouTube chat or on the Virtual Skeptics hashtag on Twitter, and we will try to incorporate them into what we were doing. And first up, we do not have a trivia question this week.
However, viewers can try to identify the piece of furniture behind Tim.
Oh, yes.
Okay, it's not as hard as a movie.
And first up in our topic list this week is Eve.
Yes. Now, as some of our viewers may know, the sun disappeared last week. Now, actually, it's not that rare for the sun to disappear. There's a phenomenon that's known in science as night, and the sun goes away and it's dark. But what we in the United States experienced on the 21st was slightly different. The sun went away during the daytime. And this phenomenon is also known by science, and it's called an eclipse. And although it's rarer than night, it's not that rare. Eclipses have happened before, and most of the time, the world has not ended, which doesn't stop people from predicting that the world will end when one happens. But here are some important things you need to know about the eclipse. First, if you do it, you will go blind. Unless you use proper protection, if you could bring up the first slide, or, you're an inept supervillain named Orange Man. Second, no matter what anyone says, even Stephen Hawking, Old Norse mythology about wolves chasing the sun are not about eclipses. The sun, the moon, and the stars will disappear at Ragnarok, which is an apocalypse, which rhymes with eclipse, but it's not the same thing. Ragnarok is in the mythical future. It hasn't happened yet. Eclipses actually have happened. And as I've said, more than once.
Yeah, the
Third,
Stephen Hawking guy, he's an idiot.
Yeah, well, about Old Norse, yeah. The eclipse in South Carolina had extra interest. On August 9th, the South Carolina Emergency Management Division tweeted the following. If you could bring up the next slide. Regarding possible paranormal activity potentially occurring during the solar eclipse 2017, as always, if you see something, say something. They also included a map of possible lizard man sightings between 1980 and 2001. A caption reads, "This historical map is in response to recent media reports about possible paranormal activity associated with the upcoming solar eclipse. SCEMD does not know if lizardmen become more active during a solar eclipse, but we advise that residents of Lee and Sumter counties should remain ever vigilant," and possibly change the name of Lee County. But that's something else, another issue.
Entirely.
Since the 1980s, people have been reporting sightings of lizard man in and around Lee County. It is said to be roughly 7 feet tall, three-toed, scaled, and with red glowing eyes. There have been a number of vehicle maulings reported in association with the lizard man sightings, although in the only case I could find where blood samples were sent to a lab, a dog was the culprit.
Yeah.
So presumably they can shapeshift between dog and lizard man. Anyway, the lizard man has become a bit of a local celebrity and marketing device in the area in South Carolina. Kind of like the Jersey Devil is right around where Bob and I live. So the warning was a joke, just a bit of fun, and there don't seem to have been any reported sightings of lizard man during the eclipse. Similarly, another sort of lighthearted look at the eclipse, visualizer and cartographer Joshua Stevens tweeted out a Sunsquatch map, if you can bring up the left side.
Sunsquatch, huh? That's awesome.
This shows the reported Bigfoot sightings within the path of totality. So you could choose where you were going based on A, totality, B, most likely to have a Bigfoot roaming around. In his tweet, he began with the statement, in quotes, "There are no more eclipse maps to make," followed by his own comment, "Challenge accepted."
That's awesome.
But yeah, some people took the warnings a little bit more seriously.
Dear.
Yeah, USA Today spoke to a paranormal investigative researcher named, and they didn't laugh at him at all, named Dennis Carroll, who said, quote, "This is a universe full of possibilities." Okay. To say anything's impossible rules out a lot.
True.
Yeah.
According to USA Today, Carroll claims that a few times each year the veil separating realities becomes so thin that it opens up portals to other realms.
Oh boy.
Wait, think Stranger Things.
Uh-huh.
This allows for the appearance of interdimensional creatures such as Lizard Man
What?
and Moss Man, a 6
Oh, yeah.
to 8 foot tall species with no neck and, again, large blazing eyes. So we jump from this is a universe full of possibilities to one of those possibilities is Lizard Man and his friend Moss Man wandering through an interdimensional portal when the veil is thin.
Which one's the superhero and which one's the sidekick, I wonder?
Yeah.
I
That's a good
don't.
question.
I'm not even sure they're friends.
Not even nodding acquaintances.
Yeah. Although they
One's-
both have the red blazing eyes, so who
Maybe
knows?
one's DC and one's Marvel.
Possibly.
That's right. So you can't see them in the same, scene.
Mm.
I have to say that Moss Man does not sound like all that interesting. Moss, traditionally, it just doesn't do a lot.
Just sits there, yeah.
Yeah. But usually then on the other hand, it doesn't have red blazing eyes. So this is probably some pretty good moss. At any rate, the veil apparently becomes super thin at Halloween, Walpurgisnacht.
The what?
And
What
left.
now?
It's a witchy thing. German witchy thing.
Mhm.
And last Monday's eclipse. NASA, meanwhile, found it necessary to assure people that the eclipse wouldn't produce food-harming radiation or cause ill health.
Okay.
I don't know why exactly it would. If the sun doesn't usually do that sort of thing, the moon sort of getting in its way,
Yeah.
whatever. Some thought the eclipse, of course, heralded the end times. Some were thinking religious apocalypse. In one version, the eclipse presages the appearance of the supposed planet Nibiru,
Oh God.
Oh boy.
which will collide with the Earth on September 23rd, according to Christian numerologist David Mead. And that's because it's 33 days after the eclipse, and 33 is important to his numer. I guess it's how old Jesus was when he died, and other things. So
33 days old? That
33 years old, but 33.
Oh.
So you need to watch out for the 33s, and so it's possible the eclipse could still nail us.
Wait, when he died the world went dark.
And also there was
his eschatology is just awful. I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm not
eschatology
even with
as
that
numerology.
eschatology.
The eclipse also occurred exactly 62 days after the Hopkinsville UFO incident, in which a number of adult human beings, including some police officers, used guns to fight off a horde of little green aliens, or possibly goblins, or maybe owls, for several hours. Hopkinsville, Kentucky, the scene of this encounter, was also the scene of the point of greatest eclipse, the moment when the axis of the moon's shadow is pointed most directly at the center of the Earth, according to planetary scientist Renee Weber. Hopkinsville became known as Eclipseville. And I'm going to call it the eclipsiest eclipse. I know that's not all that scientific, but I'm going with Hopkinsville had the eclipsiest eclipse. Locals prepared for invasion again, but this time mostly by tourists of the human variety. Local resident Tarina Bell wrote about the Hopkinsville eclipse event for The Verge, and she doesn't mention aliens, but she says, quote, "Last Thursday, my father came home from work with gossip of an Eclipse Day ISIS attack. The rumors were prevalent enough that at a press conference the following day, WKRN, the ABC affiliate in nearby Nashville, asked if the city was preparing for a terrorist attack. The local daily, Kentucky New Era, ran a front-page story on how the eclipse would bring a lot of human trafficking, despite Kentucky State Police saying they were not aware of any credible threat. 3 of my cousins were deputized to stand guard at an area Confederate monument should Antifa, or however you pronounce it, use the eclipse as an opportunity to attack. Our neighbors, the Malones, roped out off their family cemetery. Terrified eclipse chasers would park on relatives' graves.
The relatives, however, were unavailable for comment.
Yeah. None of that happened. And the aliens didn't come back, but locals did bar their doors, and the stores ran out of toilet paper and Crisco.
Crisco?
Yeah, I'm not sure why, and if it's in any way related to the toilet paper, because that's slightly worrying. But otherwise, it was a fairly uneventful eclipse. In general, as I said, the eclipse seems to have passed without major natural or supernatural disasters. We'll have to wait until next month to see if we're destroyed by Nibiru. And finally, there were some reports from emergency rooms that people needed to be treated from eye irritation after having put sunscreen right on their eyeballs. But otherwise,
oh my God.
Things went pretty well, eclipse-wise.
Nice.
You know, there's probably a insurance code for that. You know, because there's one for everything.
For Nibiru,
Especially now,
for the eyeball.
The sunscreen.
Yeah, sunscreen. Specifically for sunscreen. Yeah, I'm sure there is.
Yep. Let's see. Just looking to see if anybody had any questions. Nathan retweeted the classic Katie Mack tweet that explains the difference between a lunar eclipse, a solar eclipse, and apocalypse.
Good.
Using emojis, little planet emojis. You have to kind of see it. I can't really describe it, but it's good stuff. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Who is?
I believe I am next, and I'm trying to think of a good transition, and I can't really think of a good transition.
All right.
Except to say that we're not out of the woods yet. That there are probably some effects of the eclipse that you didn't notice. According to Marie Claire, anyway, there are some effects that you probably wouldn't notice, and that is an effect to your menstrual cycle.
Hey, I didn't notice that.
Yeah. So Jean Sinrich at Marie Claire wrote this article, and it popped up in my Facebook feed, and I was a little taken aback that anybody in my Facebook feed would take this one seriously. It was pretty poorly written. So she starts with the myth that all women's cycles synchronize, and that's a myth. That's that people had some great explanations for it, like pheromones clue you into hormonal changes and blah blah blah. So if you spend a lot of time with another woman, then they start to synchronize, and etc. And there's very little evidence to support that idea at all. It's basically a myth. But she says, before you file this in your old wives' tale folder, ask yourself this: has your period been weird lately? Because a lot of women have mentioned to me that theirs is. And it just might have something to do with the solar eclipse occurring today. It was the day that when the moon will completely cover the sun for close to a full 3 minutes this afternoon. For close to a full 3 minutes. Close to a full 3 minutes.
Not really.
It blows my mind that people in this country can make a living as a so-called journalist by just writing about shit off the top of their head.
Yeah.
Stuff that isn't fiction. It just blows my mind. But that's exactly what she did. She has a bunch of anecdotes about it, and some of them are just hilarious. This is one woman says, the cycle has been longer and heavier, and I couldn't pinpoint why. Even my husband has noticed my PMS symptoms are worse this week. Does she think the eclipse is playing a role? As a believer in holistic medicine and universal alliance.
Smack. Sorry.
Universal Alliance?
Universal alliance is, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. I love this. This statement just blows my mind. As a believer in holistic medicine and universal alliance, I wouldn't be surprised if atmospheric changes could be causing the drastic difference in my menstrual cycle. So she tries to end up sounding kind of sciencey.
Yeah.
And then Jen says, science is pretty silent on this topic. The OBGYNs I consulted couldn't attest to whether our cycles could be impacted by anything outside of what's happening in our own bodies.
Plus, they seem to be laughing really hard.
But the fact is, not much research, aka funding, is dedicated to discovering this type of connection exists, if this type of connection exists. Jen, science doesn't study nonsense. The reason there's no research is because there's no...
Oh, we're going to get angry letters from her.
Yeah. Like she'll ever see. She's been, I am quite sure that many people criticized her for this. Much better, that probably some MDs.
Do you know what fixes that? Jade eggs.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm sure there's also some Goop inspired pieces on it. In fact, I remember reading something about with a link to a Goop inspired one. Here's the thing. They don't study it because we don't study things without a theoretical basis. And there's no theoretical basis because there's no mechanism for it. There's no mechanism to change the solar eclipse does not change the atmosphere, except it makes it a little cold for a couple of minutes because the sun is behind the moon. But when Jen didn't get the answers she wanted from the doctors, she reached out to an integrative nutritional specialist.
Oh, good.
And an astrologer.
Quack.
Yeah, and an astrologer.
Sweet
Here's what the nutritionist said. The nutrition specialist person, because I don't think she's a nutritionist. She's just somebody who calls herself that.
Not a dietitian.
No, this is an integrative nutrition specialist who probably could get sued for using the title. What also happens during a solar eclipse? A new moon cycle begins.
So,
a new moon cycle does not begin. I want to
show them my ass.
I mean, why does a new moon cycle begin because of a solar eclipse? I don't understand that. Anyway, she says that
it does. It's the new moon.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's the beginning of the month, the lunar month.
Right.
You know.
Is it always?
It's just another.
Oh yeah, I guess it is because it's dark. Okay, but
you just can't see the moon that day.
No, it's not. She says it is, and here's why. She says we tend to feel the strongest pulls during the full moon, which may result in heightened emotions and feelings of heaviness on a physical and energetic level. Says this woman.
Anything.
Think about the power of the moon's gravitational pull on the tides. Now imagine what that may do to our body as well.
We're getting in a David Avocado Wolf area stupid here.
This reminds me of the old the ERs are busier on a full moon bullshit. And I've talked about that, and I've talked about how on this show about how that's simply not true. And there's plenty of research to show that, because there are good explanations for the phenomenon. Unfortunately, there are good explanations for a phenomenon that doesn't exist. And this might be a good explanation if the premises were true. We tend to feel the strongest pulls on what? And the moon's gravitational pull doesn't affect our bodies at all. So, so this is bullshit. But this next quote is what killed me. The Earth is at its most fertile when the moon is full, which is the result of the Earth receiving additional light for the plants from not only the sun during the day, but also the moon's light at night. I have never heard that. Again, it's another great explanation for something that doesn't happen.
I'm curious about how, even if any of this were true, how that would sort of convince a woman, and I'm trying to say this as, gently as possible, would cause a woman's body to go, you know what, I think it's time to slough some unnecessary material.
Wait, she goes on.
Good time.
She goes on. She goes on. Traditionally, the new moon is associated with menstruation, when a woman's body is shedding, releasing, and bleeding, known as the white moon cycle. It's a time to deeply nurture and honor the body, allowing plenty of space to restore. Now think about that. If this were true, all women on the earth would bleed at the same time. Imagine the run on tampons.
Yeah.
It would all happen at the same time, if any of that were true. She says, Jen says, the bottom line is science can't say just how closely lunar phases and menstrual phases are linked, or if they're really linked at all. Yes, it can, Jen. Yes, it can. And here's the harm. So you're probably wondering what's the harm.
I'm sure Tim
Here's
is.
the harm. I'm probably wondering. So here's the harm, Tim. This quote. I finished my cycle last week, but starting yesterday, this is a quote from another person. I've been experiencing terrible cramping again. I almost thought I had a PID. I had PID, pelvic inflammatory disease. And then I saw the solar eclipse was here, and I knew my body was likely reacting to it. So she's not going to go to the doctor because she thinks this is solar eclipse. And this is a quote from one of Teen Vogue's sex educators. That is a woman whose title is a sex educator. At least the Teen Vogue piece, because they also did a piece on it after Marie Claire did, added in the obligatory skepticism. But in the end, but skeptics say, but in the end, it went much the way that a Ghost Hunter show does, with a "we'll let you make up your own mind." Unfortunately, science disagrees. This is what they said. According to Romper, the eclipse likely had no effect on our bodies. In other words, they did Google research for this piece, and they copied some stuff from Marie Claire, and then they looked for an opposing piece, and that was on Romper, so they put that in. So, according to Romper, the eclipse likely had no effect on our bodies unless you look directly at the eclipse without proper eyewear. Yeah. Although many believe the eclipse foretells doom or danger upon us all, it is wrapped only in mystic beliefs and has no scientific validity on negatively affecting one's health. Women's health acupuncturist and fertility specialist Kristen Burris told Romper. But then they say, has your period been different than normal this month? We'll let you decide exactly what's at play here. So let's quote the people who said no, and give both sides of it. Some of those people are qualified and some of those people are not, but we'll let you decide.
Yeah.
So yeah. So there were several articles on that on the internet. I read Marie Claire's pretty big site, and Teen Vogue is a huge site. And there were plenty of counter articles, so which I did not fish through because they'd likely say pretty much what I just said. But I'm sure that there was a lot of debunking, thank goodness.
Science can't say. This is like an easy one. This is, you could use the database that. Never mind. But
you know what? I thought the don't worry about your. I thought the keep your pets inside one though was sort of an easy one, and there wasn't a lot debunking that.
Oh God, the people who wanted to put sunglasses on their dogs, like people. I appreciate. No, that's weird. That's just so
Yes,
damn
well, they
weird.
should be wearing the same protective eyewear you're wearing. Because if you point at the sun, they might look.
It is useful if you want to take a funny picture of your dog.
Oh, that's
true. I'll give you
it's
that.
It's cute. It's definitely cute. If you're going to a big party to watch the eclipse, I would put some on my dog. I'd put some glasses on my dog.
Sure. Oh boy.
Wow.
Somebody's unhappy.
I'll go see what he needs.
Yeah, he's standing at the kitchen, just looking expectant.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh, Pierre commented when you were talking about the new moon. Talk about a blood moon.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's a good one.
Yep. All right. Let's see. Do we have any questions on Twitter? No real questions. Some funny comments though that I've been retweeting.
Some funny comments.
So I guess we're on to Bob. You up?
You're on to me?
We're on to you, Bob. You better have a topic.
Okay, yeah, so hold on a second. Let me I'm gazing into my crystal Pepsi. All right, and I'm getting an impression, a psychic impression from it's nearby. It's in Galloway. It's oh my God, it's just down the street from us. It's at this oh God, it's at right next to my like breakfast place. I'm so depressed. So the Galloway Township, which is where we live, they took a report from a senior citizen this week who said that he thought he was being scammed by a psychic. The first thing is if you are having any dealings with a psychic, you are being scammed by a psychic, right? Okay, but so it was a psychic that he knew as Kim, who operates Village Psychic in this Smithville section of Galloway. I mean, that really is right across the street from us. It's a kind of a, it's very twee. It's cute. There may be an original. Oh, he's back. How sweet. Good job, Eve.
I gave him sink water. That's what he wanted.
Oh dear.
Clearly
not.
It's all right.
So
just keep going, Bob. Don't let him.
I know. It's my familiar.
Oh.
Okay, so well, kind of familiar. He likes Eve more. So yeah, it's this like twee little spot, and there are all these like weird little shops. Like there's some bed and breakfast type spots, and maybe one or two original colonial rebuilt, refurbished. It's ye olde, maybe transplanted from elsewhere, but like an old farmhouse or something, and then a bunch of imitations, basically. And then like antique. If you want to go antiquing, that's the place you go. If you're looking for homemade dog biscuits, it's that type of place.
Does at least one of the buildings have a?
It reeks of patchouli.
Does at least one of the buildings have a Washington slept here plaque?
No,
that was my experience growing up in New Jersey. Is every time you saw an old-looking house, it always had Washington slept here on a plaque.
That's awesome.
Apparently,
that's funny.
He spent,
no, I haven't
his
seen
entire
that.
life just going from house to house, sleeping in every corner of the Northeast.
Yeah. Well, he was known for. No, he wasn't. But so it's this like little spot that you get a lot of people, a lot of older, middle-aged and older people are down there all the time, and there's always been this this psychic there since we showed up. Down on the boardwalk in Atlantic City, there's a psychic as well. There are one or two that I can think of in the area. I don't know how they're able to afford the rent at this place. Well, I guess I figured out this week, huh, motherfuckers? Wow. So anyway, this gentleman said he met with Kim, who offered him, according to police, treatments to cleanse his soul and allow him to live in peace. The first visit was $5,000. She usually charges, I believe, $5 for a reading. So just, an enormous markup. After additional visits, Kim recommended a, quote, 14-step chakra program for him to complete, which would cost $10,500 per step.
Whoa.
Per step.
Yep.
This is Scientology level shit, right?
Holy mackerel.
The gentleman ultimately agreed and was provided with specific instructions that yeah, I totally lost my place.
Did it involve burying money?
No,
Yeah.
kind
Putting
of.
cash in a paper bag.
No, sinking it into this psychic son's auto dealership.
Oh, nice. Very convenient.
Investigation revealed that Kim, this is from the police report, revealed that Kim exploited information she learned about the gentleman's unpleasant childhood in order to make him believe she could bring him relief. She also predicted further torment in this life and the afterlife if he did not complete the 14 steps. He received instructions to transfer $147,700 from his checking account. By the way, nice fucking checking account. To her son, Frank Marco's car business. And this is the thing that gets me, is that when they told her, or when they told this guy to transfer the money to the dealership, she said to tell the bank, the bank tellers that he was buying a car.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my brother used to work in a bank, and he said that you get little old people coming in all the time who are cleaning out their checking accounts for some jackass who lives in, Nigeria or whatever. These people knew that this was going to raise. This wasn't the first time they've done this.
No, of course not.
This was well-oiled machine here. But luckily, this old guy found that he would, somehow came to the realization. I don't know how that happened. Maybe he told someone. That was another thing they said. Don't tell anyone about this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you could bring up the first picture of. So the Miss America pageant is in Atlantic City this week. These two will not be appearing. I guess which one is the psychic and which one is her son. No, go ahead. So
Wait, okay, hang on. I'm going to use my psychic powers for this.
Yeah.
The first sight.
I don't know. These people, get them out of my fucking sight. I don't want to see them. We'll go to the. This is a shot of Smithville that I took yesterday. So it has a bunch of like ye olde little houses. What's that?
That's cute. That looks like Mystic, Connecticut.
Yeah. So the building just
I can see it.
next to the road is the psychic. Yeah. And there's it's a couple of blocks of that. Around a little lake with marauding geese and ducks.
Watch out for those geese.
Yeah, those things will nip at you. Also, roosters always around. Roosters cock-a-doodle-doo all the damn time.
Yeah.
At all hours, loudly. But yeah, so this is the scene of the crime. I want to know how one of the few attractions in this area is going to justify keeping this con artist around. Now, she's innocent until proven guilty, and by God, I hope she's found guilty and hung by her fucking toes.
That would be a great thing, ye oldie thing to do in Smithyville.
Oh, kill the witch!
Yes!
Yeah!
Wait. There's a lake. We can find out if she's guilty or not.
That's the best! I am so writing to the newspaper.
Is she the sole proprietor of that psychic shop, or is she just one of several psychics?
I don't know. I was looking into, I did a Google map search to kind of look and see how many psychics are around, and it seems to me that it's been run as Lisa Marie's, and that's not her name. Her real name isn't Kim either. It's Sally Wando. And her son is Frank T. Marco of, if you bring up the next image. Okay. They were charged with second-degree theft by oh, well.
Oops.
Don't worry.
Hang on, I'll refresh it.
It's not a great image anyway. It's just kind of a view of South Jersey and where various psychics are. So Lisa Marie psychic readings.
Right near the center there.
Yeah, that's Sally the psychic. Yeah.
There's a lot in Atlantic City.
Yep.
Yeah, no kidding. It's
the only big town in the area.
It's touristy, and they were charged with second-degree theft by deception and conspiracy to commit theft, a crime of the third degree. What about, grand theft? This is not... I'm sure that has a specific definition, but this was $147,000. This is not minor.
Seems like it should be attempted grand theft.
Or I don't know what it is.
Because the bank teller stopped it, right?
I don't know who the bank teller. I don't know if the bank teller can. It's their money.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, and the elderly are a vulnerable population. More trusting. There may be cognitive impairment, which can lead to bad judgment or impulsive behavior, and that's what you get. So I have nothing but contempt for these horrible, horrible people. And I spit at them. And when I die, I'm going to haunt these motherfuckers.
And right after the show, we're going to start building that ducking stool.
Oh my God. I am so writing. I am writing. Yes. Do you want credit? I can give you credit.
That's okay.
Local professor calls for death penalty.
No. I wanted a fair trial by ordeal.
Yeah. That's fair. That's justice.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long tradition.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's not a sentence.
Period. It has been done period accurate. Interrogation. We're gonna press them with rocks. There's just we're gonna do it. Yeah, that's great. Oh, can we allow spectral evidence? Oh, please let us. Let us.
Yeah. All right.
Wow.
So that's. Oops, sorry. I whacked into my microphone there. All right. So next up is me, I suppose. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Twitter bots. There's been a lot of discussion in recent months of Russian influence over the U.S. election. And one of the tacks that this has taken is how much influence do they have over what goes on Twitter. And there's a lot of folks doing interesting research on this, and there was a particular organization that has a digital research group called the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab. And they did some digging. I think it might have started with a tweet that President Trump retweeted, but they basically started digging around. It's like you see Trump retweet something, or you see some tweet get retweeted, and then you look at the account of the person who tweeted it initially, and a lot of times they're people that you've never heard of before, and they have weird names and oddly well-composed avatar photos that maybe look like stock photos.
Yeah.
And there have been a couple rounds of these recently where these investigative organizations have dug into these networks, and you look at the tweet and it'll have like 10,000 retweets, and you think, oh, everybody must be talking about this because it has 10,000 retweets. And you go in and look at the 10,000, because you can get a list of who actually retweeted each tweet. And lo and behold, you'll see that the accounts are all copies of each other, or they all have very similar names, or they all have very similar avatar photos. And there was one particular investigation of this one tweet that I think Trump retweeted, that they found a network of something like 65,000 accounts that were all like following each other and retweeting each other, and they referred to it as a bot network, which is partially true in that some of the accounts are algorithmically designed so that they'll just retweet whatever comes into their feed from certain accounts. But it's actually the network itself is being run by a person. And one of the things that they detected was that you can see when the tweets are being sent, and lo and behold, all the tweets that were being sent by this network were all like kind of right-wing things that were pro-Trump or whatever, following very specific topics. But they were all being sent between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Moscow time, and never any other time, even though this person claimed to be from England.
Yeah.
And they would always, all the accounts that were or a lot of the accounts that were following him, and the accounts he was following, and the ones that were retweeting him, and et cetera, were typically had a name with like 8 or 9 numbers on the end. Now, a lot of people use a couple of numbers on the end because, often your name is taken, especially if you have a common name. So you'll put your zip code or your birthday or some number that's your favorite number or whatever on
credit card.
But a lot of people, there's not a lot of real people who put 8-digit numbers on the ends of their Twitter handles or their handle on any website. For one thing, it's hard to remember an 8-digit number, and it makes it hard for people to send you stuff. It's hard to type, but it's the one thing it is good for is if you're writing a computer program to create 11 million Twitter accounts all at once. So that was an example. And there was an interesting follow-on. They wrote a whole article about how they mapped this network and figured out that it was being driven by this one particular account that Trump had retweeted. And then there were several news organizations that jumped on that and reported about it. But what was interesting was that the bot network then turned its attention toward the people who were reporting about it. And they were doing things like retweeting the people who were talking about the fact that they were a bot network. And at first they thought maybe that the bot network was malfunctioning, that it was just sort of robotically noticing that it was being talked about and retweeting, but actually they feel like it was actually a deliberate attack, that what they were trying to do was simply annoy these journalists so much, because every time someone retweets you, unless you have everything locked down on Twitter, you're going to get a message of some kind. So if 65,000 bots all of a sudden start replying to you and retweeting you, it'll basically drive your phone crazy and run your battery down, and you won't be able to get to any of the messages that are actually for you. So it's a way of annoying people to death, and it's a way of harassing people, and it's happened many times before. So it was an interesting example of what appeared to be an actual Russian bot network on Twitter, but it really raised a question of, if these outside researchers can, just using the Twitter API and a little bit of logic, figure out that this bot network exists. Oh, and by the way, this bot network was not, was largely self-contained in terms of it tweeting itself and whatnot, but it had managed to fool a number of real accounts into following it. So there were a number of verified users in sort of right-wing politics in the UK and right-wing politics in the US who were following these accounts and occasionally retweeting the crap that they were retweeting. And it was a lot of really bogus news stories, or really at the very least very inflammatory stories and crap like that. And then they looked at the topics that this bot network was tweeting on, and sure enough, it was stuff that was either disruptive in the or controversial in the United States, or other things that would be of interest to Russia, such as Crimea, Ukraine, things like that. So it was a pretty good example, but it just raises the question of, if these outside guys can figure this out, why can't Twitter shut this stuff down? Why is
totally?
They should be able to see, and Twitter has access to information that the researchers don't have. Like, for instance, if this guy is literally operating it from a single computer in Moscow in the Department of propaganda or
of
whatever
evil
the hell
plans,
whatever it is, Twitter should be able to see that all 65,000 of these bots are coming from similar IP addresses in Moscow and are all retweeting each other, possibly from the same IP address. Now, there are ways to mask that, and maybe the guy's clever and does that, but I question how clever he is if he's not smart enough to mask the 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. problem, because there's ways to handle that too. I've sent many a tweet when I was dead asleep by simply pre-scheduling it using a tool.
You liar.
So I don't.
But a retweet is different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little harder to do a retweet on a schedule, but I think a lot of the retweets and that sort of action is being done algorithmically by a computer program. I don't know. I mean, maybe they do. Maybe they literally sit there and do all this stuff manually. I think Adrian Chen wrote an article a year or so ago where he actually went there and hung out outside the building where this stuff goes on, and tried to interview some of the people who were coming in and out of the building, and talked to found a few who actually worked there, and talked to them about, that it was just this big old grind, that they would hire college students who would just sit there in front of a computer and it's not just Twitter. They would hire them to crash the comments in news stories where, maybe an anti-Russia editorial or something, and they would have 100 people show up in the comment section of the editorial and yell at the person who wrote the editorial or whatever, which is one of the reasons why comments suck. Not the only reason why comments suck.
And why a lot of sites are not doing them anymore.
Yeah, a lot of more and more sites are turning comments off because they just don't know how to deal with just the influx of crap comments, or they just don't have the resources to properly moderate them.
Yeah.
Which is sad, because you lose a good way to communicate with people. But yeah, it was an interesting example of,
And so this is one guy, without a doubt, if it hadn't been Trump retweeting him,
right,
it could have been any one of several dozen people doing this type of trolling.
Sure. And there are many of these networks. Presumably, this 65,000 was being run by this one, college intern or whatever you want to call him, who works for the Russian government. There might be an equal number of other bot networks that are being run by other people, and and it doesn't take too long. I've seen people commenting on, I occasionally see people I don't try to get into too many like super political discussions, particularly on Twitter, but occasionally I'll see sort of the tail end of someone's discussion or someone yelling at someone, and I'll go back and look in the threads. And you don't have to go far to find one of these accounts that really, 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 really looks like it's fake. One of the big tip-offs that is a really good way, and there's an article that these guys wrote called 12 Ways, it's on Medium, you can Google 12 Ways to Spot a Bot. And they talk about different ways to notice notice that it might be part of a bot network. Things like, it's kind of an anonymous looking account, it doesn't have a real person's name on it. What times of day, how much amplification it's getting. Like if it's, it's an account that, has only existed since last week and it's getting 1,000 retweets on every tweet. That's suspicious. But one of the things I've noticed that's a really good rule of thumb when you see some random tweet that you're thinking about commenting on or debunking is go look at the account that sent the tweet. And don't look at the number of followers, although the pure number of followers is an interesting thing to look at, because if the person has like one follower, well, clearly they don't have that much in terms of effect on anybody. But an interesting thing to look at is subtract the number of people they're following from their followers. So in other words, I have roughly 10,000 followers on Twitter, but I follow about, I think, 1,500 people, which is probably about the maximum number. Maybe 1,000 to 2,000 people is probably about the max number of people you could actually follow on Twitter and not drive yourself insane.
Mine's a lot smaller than that.
Yeah, I follow a couple hundred people. Maybe some people follow 50. Some people, people do it different ways.
Makes me nuts.
But people don't. But when you see an account that has 40,000 followers and is following 33,000 people, that's bullshit.
Yeah, totally.
Because that means that person is not reading Twitter at all. They're just talking on Twitter. And the way that happens is there's a lot of, aside from bot networks who are just all controlled by the same person and are just following each other, but also there's kind of these sort of low-grade social media marketing idiots on Twitter.
Those are everywhere.
And they will agree. You'll see in their profile they'll say follow back.
Yeah.
Or they'll use the hashtag follow back. And that means if you follow me, I'll follow you, and we'll build up our follower count. Well, the end result is you're both following way too many people to read, which means neither one of you are actually reading Twitter anymore.
Or engaged,
so,
yeah.
And it means that half your followers only followed you to get you to follow them.
Yep.
So they're not reading you either. So it's all just yelling into a void. And that's what most of these bots are doing, is just yelling into a void, except when every once in a while they catch the attention of somebody like Trump, or maybe a columnist for some magazine or some other, right wing or left wing. There are bots on both sides. These techniques are being used to try to influence the discussion on both sides. So they're definitely.
Are you saying that there are many sides? Is that what you're saying, Tim?
No, I'm not saying there are many sides. But I'm saying it is not particularly a right-wing phenomenon.
Oh, yeah.
There are networks of bots, some Russian, some other things, where people are trying to influence what's going on in left-wing parts of Twitter. So be very careful when you see a tweet and you're thinking, oh, I want to respond to this or debunk that. Read the article 12 Ways to Spot a Bot and take a look at the account that sent that tweet and think about it a little bit before you respond, because obviously if you know the account from before, go right ahead. But if you don't know who this person is, investigate a little bit, and a lot of times you'll realize you're just looking at a bot. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention is there was another sort of bot network of I don't know if they were retweeted by Trump or what, but there was a particular woman who was running like a Trump, pro-Trump online store or something. And she got a lot of retweets for some particular thing that she sent. And then people saw her profile photo and said, there's something odd about that profile photo. And they dug around and figured out that the profile photo had been stolen off of a T-shirt website. And they realized that a whole bunch of her followers were all had fake profile photos that were all stolen off of T-shirt sites. And literally the fake photos had the person wearing a white T-shirt, and the T-shirt would have printed on it, "Put your graphic here."
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Because that's how these T-shirt sites work, is they take a picture of a person with a generic T-shirt on, and then they use the pattern, they Photoshop their graphic onto that, so that way you can have a picture of a nice looking model wearing a T-shirt that you've never even made yet. And people will create graphics for T-shirts that they haven't even made yet and put them online and see if people want to order them. And the people had grabbed all these photos and created this whole network of people who were supposedly pro-Trump supporters, and all they were T-shirts.
Sorry.
So a little bit of digging around, some reverse image searching, and
oh God.
And
yeah, I've seen a lot of people with the inevitable sharks in the freeway, photos coming out of Houston. People have been reminding them, there is this reverse image search you can do.
Yeah. I assumed, I saw one person tweeting this shark on the highway photo, and I kind of assume at this point that photo is so well known that the person's being ironic at this point, or trolling. But you never know. You never know.
The only thing that I've seen that's even remotely like that was Joel Osteen's church trying to make the excuse for why they didn't open up. They sent the media all these pictures of the hallways flooded, but the pictures are not from this storm. They're from years ago. Yeah. And since that flooding, they've actually installed things to keep it from flooding. So
really, that happened.
I didn't hear that part. Yeah.
They keep changing their story too.
Yeah, and he changed the story today. Today he claims that the church was always open.
Yeah.
Sure,
he's just a rot. Well, what do you fucking expect? The mosques, however, were open and no one had to ask them.
Yeah.
No.
Texas.
Yeah.
And mattress stores.
And mattress stores are doing a really good job.
And furniture stores and all sorts of businesses. Yep. And the building next door to him apparently was open, so there was no flooding where his building did not get flooded. And
as far as I can tell, the response has been really overwhelmingly civilian. Like people are going out and pulling folks from the water. Unbelievable to watch.
It is. Yeah. It is amazing.
All right, so we're getting near the end of the show. Just looking to see if we had any questions.
Oh, if anybody is considering sending money, you might look to, just an idea, to animal shelters that are outside of Houston. Are also going to be hit hard and probably won't be remembered.
ASPCA is taking donations right now too.
Yeah. So.
Yep.
That's a good one.
Steve Exton on the YouTube chat was asking, how do you best use Twitter to get your skeptic message out? Do you directly tweet to people? One of the things you can, if you have a relationship with that person, but one of the things to be very, very careful about on Twitter is @ messaging, which is when you send something to a person. someone unsolicited. Because if the person doesn't like the fact that you did that and they hit the report button, that is viewed very dimly by Twitter. If you're sending messages to people and they're not asking for them or you're not following them, Twitter considers that spam. Because a lot of people have used that as spam. They'll just tweet links at people and stuff like that.
Well, one of the things that I did with the Brzezinski stuff, who is in Houston, I hope he's okay, is is to send, when somebody would share a video, usually the Brzezinski movie, I'd ask them, would you be interested in seeing what an oncologist had to say about this?
Mm-hmm.
It's a different analysis. And if they say, no, thanks, then it's over.
Right.
You just, hi. Sometimes it leads to a discussion. Sometimes it leads to a flame war.
Yeah.
But, Twitter considers that spam?
Well, I was going to say, here's one way to mitigate it. Before you interact with the person, if it's not someone you've interacted with before, follow them. You can unfollow them later after, your discussion is over. But if you're going to interact with someone that you don't know who they are or whatever, follow them first and then ask them the question and try to be nice. But that will mitigate, because if you're following them, then it's expected behavior that you might at that person. But the red flag to Twitter is two people who don't follow each other or at messaging each other. And if one of them ends up reporting the other, then that ends up being, particularly if it was all in one direction. If the conversation gets going, I think you're safe at that point, because if the person replies to you, then clearly they're saying, I want to have a conversation. But I know in particular, there were some people who were experimenting with bots a long time ago who would, there was a climate bot at one point that would look for people who were tweeting like the standard tropes about, the hockey stick isn't real.
Yeah.
It hasn't, the earth is actually cooling in the last 15 years and all these standard things that climate deniers would say. And the thing would text match on that and then at a debunk link at that person. And the problem, and there were actually some interesting articles about that, and they went and interviewed the guy in Australia who built these bots. The problem was the bot ended up getting disabled by Twitter because people would get mad and say, I don't want to be debunked. And they would hit report on the tweets. And from Twitter's point of view, it's like, hey, this bot is just sending unsolicited messages at people. That's spam.
But doesn't it also indicate that the people are just mechanically sending out talking points?
Yeah. Well,
yeah. So you
have to be careful. You do have to be careful about how you.
I've honestly never had a problem with that strategy, and some success sometimes.
Yeah. Always be nice.
And often it's for people who might not. You may not be having the conversation with that person so much as someone who comes across an opposing perspective who'd be open to it, who may be on the fence.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay, announcements. We have any announcements? Dragon Con is this weekend. So if anybody's going to Dragon Con, Derek and his crew are doing Skeptrack again. So they got all sorts of skeptic stuff scheduled, and I think I'm on one panel on Sunday. We'll see.
Have fun without me.
Yeah, Barb's not going to be here this year. I won't be there. But I'll be around, so come up and say hi if you see me. Any other announcements?
No, we sent in our book proposal, Eve and I.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah.
It's not going to get picked up, but we did it, goddamn.
But we're really optimistic.
Yeah.
You can always self-publish it if you get shut down.
I can't.
Yep.
Oh, really?
No, well, it's tied to my tenure. I have to get a book or a certain number of articles published. So Yeah.
Well, let's just keep at it.
Well, that's
I
what
mean,
you
there's
do.
more than one publisher in the world.
This particular publisher was very quick in getting back to us. So quick.
Hmm.
Oh, good. All right. I guess that's it.
Yeah.
We're gonna do book time.
Oh, you want to do book time? Do you guys have books?
We usually do. So.
Okay. Well, you go, Barbara.
Okay. It's red, ain't it? He said. The girl let the braid drop back with a sigh that seemed to come from her very toes and to exhale forth all the sorrows of the ages. Yes, it's red, she said resignedly. Now you see why I can't be perfectly happy. Nobody could who has red hair. I don't mind the other things so much, the freckles and the green eyes and my skinniness. I can imagine them away. I can imagine that I have beautiful rose leaf complexion and lovely starry violet eyes, but I cannot imagine that red hair away. I do my best. I think to myself, now my hair is a glorious black as the raven's wing. But all the time I know it's just a plain red, and it breaks my heart. It will be my lifelong sorrow. I read of a girl once in a novel who had a lifelong sorrow, but it wasn't red hair. Her hair was pure gold, rippling back from her alabaster brow. What is an alabaster brow? I could never find out. Can you tell me?
She should feel better because redheads tend to go gray more quickly.
Is that true?
I believe so, yeah.
All right, Eve, you're up.
If you cite tertiary sources in a scholarly argument, you will mark yourself as either a novice or an outsider, and many readers won't take you or your argument seriously. This response may seem unfair, but it's not. Tertiary sources aren't necessarily wrong. Many are, in fact, written by distinguished scholars, but they are limited because they are intended for broad audiences who are unfamiliar with the topics that they address. They can sometimes oversimplify the research on which they are based, and they are susceptible to becoming outdated. But if you keep these limitations in mind, tertiary sources can be valuable resources. They can inform you about topics that are new to you, and if they have bibliographies, they can sometimes lead you to valuable secondary sources.
All right. Bob?
Chiropractor Michelle Whitney, who at the time was the chair of the Chiropractic Awareness Council of Canada, wrote, "The chiropractic profession was founded on very specific principles. These principles are here to stay, whether you like it or not. Call me an innatist, a subluxationist, a fundamentalist. Bring on the chiropractic inquisition."
Okay.
All right.
That was
You can do that.
caps, if you couldn't tell. Yeah.
We cannot know the world, but we have to live somewhere. So we construct cozier, more comprehensible versions. Move in and hunker down. Meanwhile, out there in the Ungahung, millions of others do likewise. People we don't know and mostly don't care to. These people are stereotypes. Journalist and critic Walter Lippmann introduced stereotypes in the psychological sense back in the 1920s. In his seminal work, Public Opinion, he noted that we pick up a salient detail about a person or group: black, white, international banker, kindergarten teacher in Brooklyn, Baton Rouge, and then we blithely fill in the rest of the blanks. Now we think we know them. Barb, what was your book?
My book was, I don't know if you can read that, Anne of Green Gables. Montgomery.
Eve?
The Craft of Research by Wayne C. Booth and a bunch of other people. Over 700,000 copies sold.
Nice.
Damn it.
That's pretty good for a book like that.
Yeah.
It's required.
Yes, the textbook for my class.
Yeah. I have Paul Benedetti and Wayne McPhail's. Well, that's a heck of a name. Wayne McPhail. Spin Doctors, the chiropractic industry under examination. About chiropractics in Canada. Soviet Kanukistan.
And mine was a little teeny book called The Trouble with Reality by Brooke Gladstone, the host of On the Media.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Bob just squeed.
Which, if you give them money, they will send you a free copy of this.
It's not free.
Oh,
You sent the money.
that's true. Good point, Bob.
Thank you.
All
Skeptic.
right. Let me see if I can get my theme song set up here. I think we're ready to
You have a theme
dance.
song?
You ready to dance?
He has his own personal theme song.
Yes.
Wonk,
No,
wonk,
our
wonk,
theme song.
wonk,
You
wonk,
know.
wonk, 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 wonk.
The Virtual Skeptics is an independent production of What's the Harm.net, Skeptical Humanities, Brian Gregory, ICBS Everywhere, and Doubtful News. Our logo was designed by Sarah Mayhew at sarahmayhew.com. Our theme music, which you're hearing now, is by Musicant and is used with permission.